Your peace you give me in time of the storm. You are the source of my strength. You are the strength of my life. I lift my hands in total praise. Well, the opening music, the opening words. Thank you, Bill Quist, for fulfilling my desire for that song to be played today. It was a song that we heard at the burial for Dr. Dorsey Blake. And I've been told it was his favorite song. Well, his birthday, Dr. Blake's birthday, is coming up Saturday. And several people plan on going to the gravesite for contemplation and prayer. And the recording that I shared online, maybe some of you already saw it, or maybe not, was from the choir at Trinity United Church of Christ, led at the time by Dr. Jeremiah Wright Jr., an important colleague of Dr. Blake. Dr. Wright actually spoke here at Fellowship Church, and maybe he spoke before I came, I don't know. But since I've been here, he spoke in 2009, right here, when he also received the Howard Thurman Award. Dr. Wright, a powerful preacher, has been described by Reverend J. Alfred Smith, Sr., like this. Dr. Wright allows his spirituality to crest like an ocean wave to a mysticism that allows God to address the hearer through the biblical text. This kind of preaching transforms lives. This is, I believe, the essence of a preacher who's able to speak to people's needs, to touch people in their hearts and souls. Under Dr. Wright's leadership, the congregation of Trinity United Church of Christ grew, I think it started out with 87 members, and grew to 8,000 members. If you watch him preach, you will see the dynamic, living spirit of what W.E.B. Du Bois termed the Negro preacher. In Souls of Black Folks, Du Bois wrote about his first experience with this preacher when he visited the South. He wrote, "The black and massive form of the preacher swayed and quivered as the words crowded to his lips and flew at us in singular eloquence. The people moaned and fluttered." Imagine that. Another description of such a preacher comes in the words of Dr. Howard Thurman as told to him by his grandmother, Nancy Ambrose. He wrote, "Once or twice a year, the slave master would permit a slave preacher from a neighboring plantation to come over to preach to his slaves. The the slave preacher followed a long tradition, bringing the sermon to a grand climax by a dramatization of the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. But this preacher, when he had finished, would pause, his eyes scrutinizing every face in the congregation. And then he would tell them, "You are not niggers. You are not slaves. You are God's children." When my grandmother got to that part of her story, there would be a slight stiffening in her spine as we sucked in our breath. When she had finished, our spirits were restored. A stiffening of the spine, a renewal of our spirits. This is what many of us are looking for in a worship experience. These examples of the slave preacher illustrate what it is like for a preacher to help people keep fresh before them the moments of their high resolve. That in fair weather or in foul, in good times or in tempests, in times of trouble, they would not forget that to which their lives were committed. Thurman saw these moments as a deposit left by some former radiance. Maybe the radiance Hildegard was talking about in our opening reading. It is this radiance that Dr. Dorsey Blake helped us to access, and what Jeremiah Wright has also done. They have accessed that living spirit connected across time to a people that were so creative, so audacious, so connected to the all-pervading presence of the Holy. And it was with these examples in my mind that I was reminded of a book by Dr. Wright, given to me by our board chair, Brian Kastner. It's a book of sermons entitled, "What Makes You So Strong?" I settled on a sermon entitled, "What's in This for Me?" One of the passages that he based his message on was Isaiah 43, verses 1 through 5, which in part reads, "I have called you by name, and you are my own. When you pass through deep waters, I am with you. When you pass through rivers, they will not sweep you away. Walk through fire, and you will not be scorched. Through flames, and they will not burn you. For I am the Lord your God. Have no fear. I am with you." I think I could be done now with the sermon. Dr. Wright emphasizes the promise of these words. The promise that despite trials and tribulations, despite problems in our lives, God will be with us. Each of us as a part of the living Spirit, the all-pervading presence, the great Spirit of life, evident in all creation, urging us on to total praise. Dr. Wright calls this the heavenly presence, pointing out that he does not want to lose the ability to refer to heaven. He says that there were many in his church who were intellectuals and people who come out of that strong left-wing African-American Afrocentrism. And they got nervous when he talked about heaven. He told them, I understand where you're coming from, but I still need the idea of heaven. I understand this viewpoint, although I don't come from a strictly Christian view of spirituality. I also need heaven. The idea of a Father Sky, of a sense of freedom, and a view of the horizon. It provides a balance and a sanctuary that connects to our crown chakra, what Dr. Carolyn Miss calls the spiritual connector. She says that the sacred truth of this chakra is live in the present moment. Imagine that. Isn't this the message we've been hearing all around us? In order to connect to the spirit of life, we must focus on the current moment. In the words of Thich Nhat Hanh, life is available only in the present moment. So, the idea of heaven is important. Not only is it a reminder of coming back to the present moment, but the idea that our crown chakra also connects us. It's the spiritual connector. Connects us to our own body and to each other. For Thich Nhat Hanh continues by saying, we are here to awaken from our illusion of separateness in life and in death, as we're said to be reunited with our loved ones in heaven. It's this idea of heaven that Dr. Wright emphasized in his sermon and spoke about throughout his life. In his book, A Sankofa Moment, in which he discusses the history of Trinity United Church of Christ, he describes the early history of his denomination and his particular church. This was an eye-opening experience for me as a white person with ancestors, presumably in heaven, who were part of the roots of the United Church of Christ, turns out. My ancestors on both sides were part of the Congregationalist Church. Wright describes this church as being at the forefront of the anti-slavery movement and one of the roots of the United Church of Christ. I guess I hadn't realized this before, and it did, I admit, help me to stiffen my spine a bit. Well, Wright goes on in that book to discuss the history of the church, the trials and tribulations, as well as its stability under his leadership. Reading this, I was reminded of the beginnings of our own beloved community. In the words of the declaration written at this church's founding, it goes like this. The Church for the Fellowship of All Peoples is a creative venture in interracial, intercultural, and interdenominational communion. While it derives its inspiration primarily from the source of Hebrew Christian thought and life, it affirms the validity of spiritual insight wherever found, and seeks to recognize, understand, and appreciate every aspect of truth, whatever the channel through which it comes. It recognizes and affirms that the God of life and the God of religion are one and the same, and that the normal relationship of people as children of God is one of understanding, confidence, and fellowship. Reading this declaration, hammered out by the founding members of this church, reminded me that we are perhaps, again, at a pivotal place in our own history, a kind of Sankofa moment of our own. Now, the Sankofa is a symbol of the Akan people of Africa, expressed as a bird whose body is facing one direction and the head is turned in the opposite direction, teaching us that we cannot go forward without first understanding our past. It is, in other words, important to know where we came from, to honor it, to learn from it. I believe we have much to learn from our founding documents. Indeed, we still use them today, over 80 years later, in their revised form. In this Sankofa moment of grief, and perhaps re-examination of our roots, our vision as a congregation, including Dr. Dorsey Blake's legacy, may we find our way forward, the way that all those who have come before, all those here in the present time, and those yet to come, can envision and work toward. May we follow the beams connecting us to heaven. One of my very favorite songs is Beams of Heaven. I won't sing it, but I'll read you some words. Beams of heaven as I go through the wilderness below. Guide my feet in peaceful ways. Turn my midnights into days. When in the darkness I would grope, faith always sees a star of hope. And soon from all life's grief and danger I shall be free someday. Harder yet may be the fight. Right may often yield to might. Wickedness a while may reign. Satan's cause may seem to gain. There is a God that rules above, with hand of power and heart of love. If I am right, God will fight my battle. I shall